Hi, I'm Pastor Mike at Redeemer Church, and this is our series, Whom Do You Obey? Today what we're going to be talking about is sphere sovereignty. Now, when Governor Inslee holds a press conference, you notice right away that he frames his orders as fiats, as decrees, as if he is the sole authority in the state of Washington over every area of our lives. When we can leave our house, where we can go when we do, and what we have to wear when we leave. Now, most modern Americans don't see this as a problem, because most modern Americans would define government in terms of a centralized state, as in the government is in Olympia. The government will create jobs. The government will take care of its citizens. Now, these statements show the modern misunderstanding of exactly what a government is and does. Historically, the term government was always qualified in some way. When you said the word government, you had to qualify which government you were talking about, civil, family, or church. The state was seen as one government among many, each having a legitimate realm of God-given authority. But the very definition of government has changed. Now, in Webster's Dictionary of 1828, the definition of government is direction, regulation, as in, these precepts will serve for the government of our conduct. Control, restraint, as in, men are apt to neglect the government of their temper and passions. Now, the modern Webster's definition of government is much shorter. The exercise of authority over a state, district, organization, institution, etc. Now, you see right there, the 1828 Webster's Dictionary defined government in terms of personal self-control, personal government, while the modern definition restrains the term to mean only institutions. This older understanding of government is understood in Abraham Kuyper's doctrine of sphere sovereignty. Kuyper was a 19th century Dutch pastor, theologian, statesman, and politician who rejected both the popular sovereignty or democracy of the French Revolution, in which all rights and political authority resided in the individual, as well as rejecting the state sovereignty of Germany, in which all rights and political authority resided in the state, a precursor to the fascism and communism of the 20th century. Now, Kuyper taught that rights and authority are derived from God, for the individual as well as the state. God delegates rights and authority, not only to individuals, but to states and to all other intermediate bodies of authority. School boards, elder boards, families, states, counties, etc. Each sphere derives its authority directly from God and should be free from encroachments from the other spheres. Therefore, there are more governments than merely the civil government, each having an authority over a defined jurisdiction. So a government is a limited authority over a specific sphere of life. I'm going to say that again. A government is a limited authority over a specific sphere of life. The problem is that most modern Americans think that the state is the supreme authority in the land. The state determines the speed limit, the state determines the kindergarten curriculum, the state determines who gets a license to cut your hair. The state determines how many rounds you can carry in your handgun, how much ethanol is mixed with the gasoline, and we are all raised pledging fealty, allegiance to a state that is indivisible. Now, that's a very dangerous idea that we're going to come back to later. We pledge ourselves to a state that is indivisible. You can't break it up. It's one thing that can't be divided, it can't be separated. Now, given the size and the power of the state, it is no wonder that government has such a narrow definition. But it was not always this way. The government of self, of church, of city, of a family, of private property, are all defined biblically as separate governments, though their authority is sometimes overlapping. Now, police officers understand sphere sovereignty very well. If the deputy of one county drives into another county and arrests a suspect without notifying the county that he's in, it is actually a violation of his authority. A county deputy's authority ends at the county line. This is why county police departments recognize each other's authority and work very closely together in each other's districts in order to keep the spheres of authority very distinct. Now, these spheres are also seen in embassies. The U.S. Embassy in London is considered U.S. soil, and the authority of the UK ends at the door. The soil of the U.S. Embassy is America. If an American citizen has committed a crime in the UK and flees to the embassy, the U.S. government has to turn them over. It would be what they call an international incident if the UK were to violate that authority and go in and retrieve the individual themselves. This is why embassy attacks are taken so seriously. An attack on the U.S. Embassy in Iraq is considered and is an attack on the U.S. itself. Now, this is how sphere sovereignty is supposed to work between governments, churches, families, etc. The government's sphere of authority goes only so far and no further, right up to the door of the embassy. There is a clear biblical basis for this. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, for example, authority over a child's education is expressly given to fathers, not governments. So governments have no biblical jurisdiction over the education of their citizens' children. It's not their sphere of sovereignty. As we looked at last week, the civil government is also given spheres over which they have authority. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 14 is an example which states that governments punish evildoers, not private citizens. So vigilantism is wicked, but so too is a government that reaches into the classroom. Now, what we are experiencing now in the United States due to COVID shows that modern American Christians are not familiar with the doctrine of sphere sovereignty. We intuitively know that if a police officer barges into our home, it is wicked. He has to be given a warrant. He needs a warrant to come into our house. Otherwise, he is violating our sovereignty. Now, we know a pastor who is doing home visits to make sure that his congregation is brushing their teeth correctly isn't just silly. It's absurd. It's absurd no matter what the rationale would be. Now, but given sphere sovereignty, how far can the state go in determining how, when, where, and in what manner a church serves communion, or sings, or stands together? Given sphere sovereignty, how far can the government go in making medical decisions for you? These are hard questions, especially for people raised in a country where the government mandates fluoride be pumped into our water supply because we can't be trusted to brush our teeth. No wonder we're so confused. But it is time. It is time to dig deeper into this subject, to grow to understand it better, to consider just how far and in what regard the government of family, church, and state extends and doesn't. Thank you, and have a nice day.